Welcome, artists. Hi, and hi out there, everyone. We're in the Zoom as we've been for over a year. I'm so happy to be here today. I'm Achinta S. McDaniel. I'm the curator for the Love of L.A. special project of these wonderful humans and artists in the Zoom with me today. Soon we'll be able to hug when we're done with vaccines. And our theme is objects in mirror. So I just want to first welcome Sharaya Patel. Hi. How are you? And
Good.
Shalini Patel, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Lal, how you doing?
Hi.
So these artists have never met. Is that true?
True. Just on Zoom.
Just on Zoom.
Yes.
And even that, just a little bit. I've met all of you in person. I'm the lucky one here, the common denominator. But how wonderful and magical to have you all together and be able to bring you together in this crazy, weird way with the incredible music center. Yeah, I don't know. For me, creating this little vision really was with all of you in mind. So Objects in Mirror kind of came to me when I was asked to curate a project for this, really wanting to honor the diaspora and South Asian Americanness and whatever multifacetedness that is. So you all are so different in so many ways, and there's such really cool, incredible through lines just in our conversations and my seeing and receiving your work or hearing about it, or in different ways. So I just wanted to first point that out and say I'm so happy and we're honored to have you. But let's get into a little Q&A. Should we do that? And I'm just going to go down the road. Even though I just introduced your names, I'm just going to go and we're going to popcorn it, right? We're going to mumpili it. So I'm going to say, I'll call out someone, you answer, and then you go ahead and knock it to the next person, okay? For this one, I'm just going to say, who are you? How do you identify yourself? And I'm going to start with Shalini.
Hi, my name is Shalini Bathina. I identify as a South Asian, Indian American, that's what I say, Indian American artist. I grew up in the Bay Area, but lived in India and now live in LA. So I've kind of lived all over and have never been situated in one place my entire life. So I kind of come with a lot of different experiences, and that's kind of shaped who I am and my career. I'm an actor primarily as a profession, and so that even just coming from different experiences, like I've chosen a different path, and I kind of I'm very proud of that. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit who I am.
Thank you. I'm gonna popcorn into whoever you choose.
Shreya.
Okay, so my name is Sharaya. I'm also an Indian American artist. That's what I consider myself. I do feel though that I was born and raised in LA my entire life. I haven't lived anywhere else. But I do feel that as an artist, I kind of have a sense of duality to me just because I have trained my entire life basically in the classical Indian dance Bharatanatyam and in contemporary jazz and ballet. And so I kind of see myself as both an Indian American artist and a traditional, I guess, more Western artist. So, yeah.
Great. Well, you have to popcorn to someone. I don't know who you're going to choose.
That leaves me.
Hi.
My name's Irish Lal, and I'm a male Indian American recording artist. And I play the trumpet and compose music as well. And I'm also I also produce art videos, and that's kind of part of the project that we're doing for this, for the Love of L.A. And I've been a musician pretty much since I have the traditional Western kind of upbringing as far as studying trumpet in the elementary school band and then playing it through high school jazz band, and then in college getting a little bit more serious. But it wasn't until later in life, once I actually signed recording contracts and was doing it professionally, that I decided to go back to Indian roots and blending East Indian classical instruments with what I do. And it's also a result of kind of the musicians that I've met throughout my career. It's only about right now in my career that I'm friends with sitar players and tabla players who live in Los Angeles, who do a lot of film and television recording, but we've now crossed paths and we like performing with each other live and recording, and it's exciting. I mean, it's unfortunate that COVID happened right when we all got together and said, let's launch this monthly residency and it's going to be so cool. And we want to involve artists and dancers and musicians and really showcase South Asian art. I mean, I call it Indian American art, but we're kind of opening up to South Asian because we got so many Pakistani friends and Bangladesh friends who want to be involved. And honestly, you don't have to be from, the diaspora, but it's something exciting that we kind of want to do right now.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Arish. Thanks, all of you. Yeah, and also I just feel like that resonated with me a little bit, Arish, because that came a little later in life. Like I always sort of took it for granted as like the thing that I was good at, being Bollywood. Like I had my serious ballet and tap and jazz and modern dance life growing up, right? I can see
Mhm.
nodding. And then like obviously I was good at Bollywood and Bhangra. Like we just did that, but that was just like, yeah, obviously, like that's fine. It's not me, It was later in life that I was like, wait, let me go to India, let me study Kathak, let me really, and that and want to embrace it in this different way, So that's interesting. I just that hit me, which I love. Yeah, okay, so bringing you all together in this kind of cool jam session, I wonder what's going to turn out like. I think it's going to be amazing. It's up there on the sites, everyone can view it. And we have these cool 3 different videos of all of you. So we have 2 dance artists, we have this incredible, what are you, Irish? You just kind of told us, but music and film and beautiful artwork colliding, and you have a dancer in there, Mayuri, which is wonderful. For me, this is such a beautiful collage of really like what I always think of when I think of South Asian artists in the United States, all over the world, but really here, right? It's home. That there's so many layers. Shalini just now, like, I'm an actor, also I do this. And her background, your background is classical Indian and Bollywood and some modern, right? So just like how many layers, how much virtuosity is sort of embedded, what the ancestry is like those movement dialects, those music dialects that we sort of naturally speak, or what I was bringing up, like that is just common in us, is something really cool. And I also think I'm seeking in this to really de-invisibilize that idea that there's not like a monolithic representation of Indianness, right? Or that India is South Asia, or that South Asia even exists. Like people don't even realize that. So seeking to de-invisibilize that, I think, is really important. I feel like to all of us when we've had our separate conversations kind of preceding this, and also dismantling this monolith myth, right? And really embracing our multifacetedness. So with that kind of interrogation in mind, if you could each kind of speak a little bit about your projects for this, for Objects in Mirror specifically, about that kind of, I don't know, ways in which your approach was for this project in particular with like that, the monolith multiplicity, and also if you could start it by finishing the sentence, Objects in Mirror, and then kind of a brief explanation about your process. And why don't we go backwards and start with Arish?
Objects in Mirror is my approach to, approaching South Asian culture. And the project that I did is my album, which is Journey Through the Chakras. And I'm exploring ancient concept of the human energy centers of the body, which is an Indian concept, but it's been, retold and reinterpreted through the ages. And now with yoga and mindful meditation and lots of other Eastern cultures that are becoming popular in Western cultures, I kind of wanted to take an approach, initially a musical approach to it. So with my album, I've got 7 songs and each one represents a chakra. And musically, I'm kind of trying to convey basically what the ideas that each chakra represents. But with Objects in Mirror, I mean, we're stuck here in COVID-19 where we're separated apart. I thought this was such a cool concept because it would be like the dancers are not looking at the music in a mirror. And now they're trying to interpret the same concept of the chakras, but they're doing it, with the concept of dance. And so without us ever being in the same room together, we're kind of being an ensemble together, still working on the same concept of, basically trying to convey how we interpret a particular chakra. And I can get into a little bit more detail, but I wanted to start with that.
I think that's great. Can we kick it to Sharaya then?
Yeah. Okay, so Objects in Mirror is my interpretation of myself as a, American dancer and then an Indian dancer as well. So for me, when I heard the title Objects in Mirror, I kind of took it as every time that I dance, when I look at myself in the mirror, I either see an American dancer or I see an Indian dancer. And that's usually how it is. It's either one or the other. And I'm never really able to find, that kind of intersection between the two. And so with this project, I kind of wanted to deviate from the stereotypical Indian dancer. And I kind of wanted to show the duality that any Indian dancer can have. So I tried to, in the project, you can see I tried to kind of incorporate both Indian movements and contemporary movements, and then also create a blend of them together to create what I see in the mirror, which is an Indian and American dancer.
That's great. Well put. Thanks, Shreya. Shalini.
Objects in Mirror for me is at a duality can exist within us that others may not see, but you may see when you look in the mirror. And for me, that kind of like percolated this idea of Ardhanarishwara, which I've been kind of obsessed with that concept for a very long time. Just this idea of having female and male energies within us, and how over time, either you get pushed into one or the other, especially coming from a South Asian background with, traditional parents where there's like patriarchal, matriarchal families and traditional roles per se. So I wanted to just explore that and see how take that concept and maybe create two characters. And so I created a dance with me doing two versions of the dance, but together. So it's me in like a male form and a female form, more like representative or reminiscent of Parvati and Shiva. And that, I think it came from, also I was thinking about like what it means for me to be a Kuchipudi dancer, and incorporating, like I've studied from different gurus, and one of the gurus that I studied from was a male dancer. That was my original training, was from a male teacher and then a female teacher. And both those styles were actually quite different in how we moved. As a kid, I was learning this male form, and I kind of came into this world, and I started with my female teacher, and she was like, "You need to dance like a girl." And it was this idea of like, what does that mean? Okay, so kind of breaking that apart and knowing that I could never remove that from myself. Like I was always going to have this duality, and I was really proud of that. And through quarantine, I was like, through COVID, a huge part of it is you're sitting by yourself, and you're sitting with yourself for so long and looking at yourself in the mirror and like trying to figure out who you are, especially during this time when kind of all work stopped for me, especially for acting and dance, kind of just took a break because nothing was open and I wasn't seeing people, and I had to really take stock of what was important to me as an artist, especially in dance. I was doing different styles and doing other people's choreography for so long that I wanted to create something for myself and try to find something that made me uniquely me, and incorporate acting and dance. So a lot of those projects that I've been come up with has been kind of this idea of duality and making sure I'm not ignoring that part of me. So, yeah.
I love that, Shalini. Yeah, and especially that's what I mean about these layers of duality, which are so interesting. One for me that I always go back to is this feeling of like on eggshells, on a tightrope of eggshells, right? Like super white adjacent model minority myth idea, but not white enough. You have a seated table, but don't speak. So there's a lot of that. And then the other side, like not being Indian enough, or like really getting what that is as a child of immigrants. And I don't know how many generations down all three of you are, but I'm first generation born here. And just that, like the depth of that, trying to like please both sides. And then even witnessing, or when you grow up realizing, oh, your parents are also trying to navigate that immigrated here, and the depth of that, and assimilation, and like trying to protect all of us from being, persecuted really, or having like acts of violence or bullying or even microaggressions, trying to protect us from that. And some of that sometimes is under the guise of assimilation. So it's interesting. That's one for me, but I love the idea also of trying to please and be in these super gendered roles, right? And duty to family. And if, in just your practices in general, and not everyone has to answer this, whoever this speaks to, like what in your life, just lived experiences as an artist, or in your approach, not just in this project, how has that that kind of grappling or preservation or assimilation or any of these kinds of ideas as an Indian American come into play, like in your practice or life? Anyone want to?
Well, for me, it's kind of a new process for me because my first recording contract, I was playing in a rock band. I signed with Geffen Records and I was opening for people like Kid Rock and Smash Mouth. And it was white people. It was all white people in the audience. I mean, we played big crowds and everything, but it was white people.
Right.
And then since then, I've had a couple of projects. I had a band called Lal Mari, and that was the first time I mixed Indian vocals with my music, but it was still pretty much a very made for a Western audience. KCRW is the radio station in Los Angeles that played us, and I did that world. And then it's only in about the last 5 years that I've been recording and performing regularly with a bunch of really talented Indian musicians, sitar players and tabla players. One's name's Rajiv Carmichael, and he's the executive director of the LA Institute of Music, Arts and Culture. And they teach all different kinds of musical Indian classical instruments. And through that, I met a lot of professors who teach in that program. And we just started playing and jamming together. And then naturally that led to writing new music. And then we I originally had the idea of the Journey Through the Chakras idea and writing songs for each of that, but there's no way I could have done it on my own. I had to work with, these talented Indian musicians. And I was mentioning this earlier in my statement that it's unfortunate that literally COVID happened right when we were getting excited to finding the location and we had people interested. And I'm talking about doing a monthly residency. Sorry to go back for a second.
No worries.
And and unfortunately it all went down, but it's slowly opening up again. And now with COVID, we're actually thinking about wanting to do this as a pop-up monthly residency, not necessarily in a traditional, ticketed venue where you sit down and have a stage, but potentially even like a plaza like they have at the Music Center, or even right across from the Music Center where they're building Grand LA Plaza.
That would be great. Yeah, so it showed up for you a little later in life, this kind of interrogation, which is really interesting. And it can do that, right? Or a lot of times for me, even this can be tricky and touchy. Like I would reject a lot of things that were Indian, part of that out of that self-preservation in all white spaces. And I see nodding. Sharaya, have you experienced that?
Yes, definitely. I think especially growing up, I grew up in like the competition kind of dance competition industry. And I feel like that especially made me kind of resent my Indian culture and my Indian dance just because it was so different. And it was something that I never really wanted to explore, especially even, you'd always have your teachers, oh, I want to do something fusion. I want to do a fusion solo.
Oh, the F word.
Yeah, so that was always kind of the topic when it came to me and like, competing as a soloist. And I always felt so almost like ashamed when I was younger because I never wanted to, like put that out into, my competition world. It was always kind of a separate, like traditional space for me. And I never really wanted to combine the two worlds. And now I finally see myself, trying to combine the two aspects of two huge aspects of my life. And that's really cool. But at first it was definitely something that was, almost scary. I was ashamed of almost.
Yeah, it's scary. Of course. What about you, Shalini? Anything?
I had because I grew up in India from like 3rd to 7th grade. It's like formative years of my life. That's where I started dancing. I had started in a little bit before that, but it was very rigorous, like one-on-one, like really rooted in my culture. I was thrown into it from America to there. So I had to like I went straight into India and became very, but then when I came back, I went to a pretty white high school. So I hid a lot of that from pretty much everyone until like my senior year where I was like, this is kind of cool. Why don't I talk about this? And then I grew up in like theater and acting. So that was like my Western side where so much of that is just like we'd only read like Shakespeare and Western, like, classics and stuff. And there was no incorporation of Indian or South Asian identity in that at all. So that was like two worlds I was living in, was like acting was my Western and Indian, dance was and I just separated. And I remember, I think I had a project in high school and I got to bring in, like, you had to bring in a solo project of like a solo performance, and I wrote a story about about my Indian dance, and they had no idea. No one had any idea that I'd been doing this for, at that point, like 9 years. And so,
You're like in the
like,
CIA.
exactly, show up just like moving like they've never seen before, and they're just like, what is this? And I was like, oh yeah, this is, I do this every
Forgot
week.
to be that masterful at this dance form.
But yeah, so then over the course of college, you do other styles, and I found more brown people in my vicinity, and accepted myself as like, oh, I've even like strayed away from Bollywood for so long because I didn't want it to be stereotypical, like, oh, you're that Bollywood girl now. And I stayed away from it. I was like, no, I can do that too and have fun and enjoy multiple sides of me. And then this year, the last 2 years actually, is where I was like, can I combine these two, like Western, my acting and my dance? Mm-hmm. And recently Shivani Thakkar and I have, we got residency at Pasadena Playhouse, which is the theater company in LA. And they have offered us a residence to just create work that kind of incorporates dance and theater. And that's because both of us come from a theater background. Mm-hmm. We're like, oh my God, Shakespeare and classical, let's do this. So, and not just like rooted in my classical versus hers. We're like combining Bharatanatyam and Kuchipudi, or at this point, I think it's blasphemous in most classical society, but like we wanted to try something different, and it's coming out really, they blend seamlessly. And it was one of those amazing things that to show, and primarily a white audience, which is awesome because most of the people that come there are white. So again, showing them outside of this world of like what they think is Bollywood or Indian dance, we're just kind of going, no, we're going to incorporate this into monologues. Because a lot of, as you know, Shreya, and everyone here, Indian classical dance forms are rooted in storytelling, and they're all about, expressions, and you tell the stories of the gods and the folklore. So I think it blended perfectly, and we've been having a blast doing that. And we were doing Winter's Tale right now by Shakespeare, and it's been really cool to blend that. And it's just feeling like, oh, now I found this balance and this side of me that I'm like, I'm not hiding or like doing only one or the other. It's really finding a balance in them.
I love that. Yeah, that speaks to me too. Oh, by the way, Blue 13, one of our first shows, or our first big shows at the Ford Amphitheater many moons ago. We're talking 2006. Was Sharaya born? I don't know, but it was our Midsummer Night's Dream. It was all dance.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it was like a lot of Bollywood and Bhangra and classical. It was great. That's the perfect one, under the stars at the Ford, and Irish used to be at the Ford too. But anyway, but you're kind of answering some of the stuff I was going to say, which was, about LA also, and how has LA, because this is Objects in Mirror, but it's for the love of LA, right? Have those two kind of concepts collided for you on this project, Objects in Mirror and For the Love of LA? And also, what has LA meant to you? And you were kind of answering that, Shalini, just with showing what's coming up at the Pasadena Playhouse. Irish, you're talking about what's coming up, hopefully with these cool pop-ups post-COVID. Shreya, what's coming up next for you? And is it in LA? Are you leaving? What has it meant to you being here and deinvisibilizing or invisibilizing you?
Yeah, so I'm off to college in about like a few months. I'm looking at Northern California. That might be where I'm headed. But I think that what draws me to LA, even if I end up leaving, but what draws me to LA specifically is just how accepting it is. I feel like not in many other places would I be able to find these opportunities to combine my two art forms and to really, explore this, I guess, blend between the two art forms that I've studied my whole life. And I think that in LA specifically, I've been able to work with Achinta. This is my second time working with her. And even the first time when we created a piece, it was something that I've really never, experienced before. It was like a really cool contemporary fusion piece. And I think if it weren't for LA and opportunities like that, I wouldn't really be able to find this new, I guess, like unique perspective in dance. So yeah, that's why I'm personally grateful for LA.
Love it. Thanks, Shreya. You got in. I felt like I was interviewing you for college for a second. Irish, what about you? What about For the Love of LA intersecting with Objects in Mirror and what LA has meant to you?
Honestly, it all hops on to like what I was saying earlier. I don't think I would have been able to even pull this project off if it wasn't for Los Angeles. As I mentioned earlier, meeting people of Indian classical music descent is all brand new for me right now. Like, this is literally in the last 5 years. I've been meeting these musicians and we've been collaborating together, and it's completely a result of them having moved to Los Angeles and wanting to start a school and start teaching there. And it's one of those things that I don't know if this would, I mean, there's certain major cities where this could possibly happen, but definitely in Los Angeles is where I think I can find genuine, talented people that, you know everything about the ancient classical way of doing things, but also wanting to collaborate with me. And my style of music blends, lots of electronic, modern music and jazz, as I'm a trumpet player. And the fact that there's people not only open to it, but, really pushing me forward to it and, wanting to collaborate, wanting to create this show. And we're doing this over Zoom, but I'm so excited and wanting to hopefully when the world opens again, that we can actually collaborate together in a live form. And, like I said, we'll be having monthly residencies, but whenever it's appropriate or however it can work out.
We'll have to fly
be able to
Sharaya
do
down, or we'll have to take it up to her if she does that.
There you go. And that's where the Los Angeles part and the objects in mirror fit so perfectly, I think, with the concept of, I've written the music part, and that's just, I guess, the foundation. And then the next part is, how a dancer interprets it. And I completely look at that as, looking into a mirror and how someone, takes their version of doing something.
Mm.
And being able to have flexibility with improvisation so we can do it differently every single time based on, who's interpreting the music.
Mm.
It's all kind of exciting for me.
Yeah, I love that. And also with this, just being in Zoom, even though these are all pretty much solo projects, apart from Mayuri dancing with Arisha's, but all of the dance was happening to Arisha's music, which is a really cool common thread. And the music is so great, and the dancing is so beautiful, everybody. So let me not forget to give accolades. You artists, you were like, when is she gonna say I'm good? No, but I think part of it for me that was intriguing was this idea of Zoom. And we played with Shalini and Sharaya possibly doing a duet early on, we're different iterations. So it's been cool to sort of collaborate and vibe on what this was going to turn out to be. But even Zoom, just this bloody flat screen and and the framing and how that's changed us, mix that with this year of being in isolation, mix that with social media, TikTok and Instagram, and how important image and how I look to myself and how I reveal myself, how I choose to reveal myself to the public, right? Which bites how I'm going to edit things to reveal myself that way. And where is the intersection of truth there, right? What am I revealing about my identity? What am I choosing to mask is the other piece of it that I think comes through strongly with each one of your pieces that I really appreciate. And then the other part of it for me was objects in mirror for me is objects in mirror are not what they appear, right? Like or what you hear, right? Thinking of music and sound, like you might be on the phone with me like this, and I'm like, hey, how are you? Yeah, good to see you. And then I show up and you're like, oh, I didn't expect her to be a brown girl, like just even these little things that happen in life. Or that I'll see Sharaya and I'm like, oh, she's a dancer. Maybe I make the assumption that she is a classical Indian dancer. Maybe I see Arish and I'm like, okay, cool. It's definitely going to be some Hindustani classical music or Shalini. And I'm going to assume if she's wearing, she has flowers in her hair, that she's going to be dancing purely classical, like just also interrogating that, because I think even still in LA, which is such a progressive city for the most part, and like you're saying, Shreya, so accepting, and like you're saying, Irish and Shalini having so many collaborators, here that are like of high quality that you can vibe with as an artist, like even still, there's this education that constantly needs to happen. So it feels like, I see you nodding, do you feel like it's not just about like creating something that people are going to like, but that you're just convincing them that you exist and that you exist in these multiple ways, like
I mean, I definitely feel that. I mean, I'm in no way a yogi or guru that can explain the chakras, to the detailed level, that you can if you took a class or a course in it. But I think my goal essentially was, I mean, the final form of this is going to be a live immersive art experience that people can come and see dancing, live painting, live musicians performing. But it's not just like, oh, that's a cool beat, that's cool music. I'm hoping at the end of it, they really learn the concepts of the chakras and, what it means and, what happens when you open it up. And if they want to study it further, they can go into there. But our show is not meant to be, a class by any means. It's definitely supposed to be an art experience. But I've always, I think from the very beginning, wanted to be able to educate,
Yeah. And then Shalini, what about you? What do you sort of seek to reveal from this, or anything that you want to add, or what else is coming up, or?
I think when we were talking about LA, what I feel like that's been a constant thing of trying to convince people that like,
I exist.
Yeah, I exist. I'm not what you assume. And and this is in every facet of my career, not just dance, but through acting too. It's like I go into the room and they assume it's something, they can't read my name. It's like, it's a constant battle to convince. I'm even on a project right now, and I'm like, just to talk about like when people don't understand your foundation because they have just no like idea about it, because we're not represented in media, we're not represented in social media, it's not there, and the authentic version of it. So people, like we have to be well versed in pretty much every culture, but no one wants to be kind of well versed in ours. So and we're a lot of the population here right now. So it's always this constant thing of I never feel like I fit in.
Yeah.
And LA was one of the places that kind of I found those people who also felt that way. And
misfit toys.
Yeah, and it was like, okay, like, and you collaborate with them, and then you said, but you're right. When we do show these, it still feels like an education, and you're still trying to teach people, even though it's been done. Even if the things that you've done, like even if it's just classical or Bollywood, you've done it. It's still an education to them. Like it's existed, you guys. Like people have been doing this forever. The fact that this is new to you is also maybe a problem, because I think it's not out there. It's not represented in a mainstream way. Yeah, so I think that's kind of what I feel about
that's
that.
exhausting. Yeah.
Exhausting.
Right. And then that idea sort of around excellence, right? Like having to be virtuoso of every last thing, Western, Eastern, everything, right? The best at all of it. And what is it? Master of none. Right? Like then there's also this idea that, oh, well, if they do everything, if she does everything, then like not wanting to be pigeonholed, but then having to be like that wicked balance. All of these things I call wicked balance. Yeah. What Shalini, say it again?
Jack of all trades.
Yeah. So that's interesting too. Anything else that anyone wants to add about these projects, or anything else that you have coming up?
I think one of the things this project created, forced, to create this new kind of digital medium where, I mean, at least for what I'm doing, I'm combining art with dance and live music. The fact that now that we have, this product that we can release them as NFTs and, something that can be involved in that world is kind of exciting for me.
Yeah.
I have same. I think because I'm doing classical in mine, you don't see that in a video form as much. It's starting to happen now, but in a very stylized way, in an abstract way. I don't think I've seen it as much. So that was really fun. And coming from a film background, it was really fun to like explore that with filmmakers and editors, and lighting and costume, and just breaking the idea of what it is to film even a classical dance. I think that's also was like a cool duality that was like, oh, this is not just like a live performance. We have this medium now that we can, really use and do like an excellent job of it, versus kind of half-assing like a camera, a tripod or whatever, which again, fine. And I've seen wonderful videos of that, but it's not so curated, but it's very curated at the same time. So it's fun. It was a really fun experience just to explore that. Never got to do it, so it was cool.
Yay, good. I'm glad. What about you, Sharaya?
Yeah, and I think I had a very similar experience to Shalini, where with classical dance, I never really had the opportunity to ever really choreograph a piece or get it filmed. And it was definitely a very different experience, because it's normally with my, contemporary modern Western pieces that I usually do that. So it was just really cool to even combine the two and just kind of take that classical dance and be able to create a piece and like knowing it's getting filmed and like, that was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Thanks, Sharaya. Yeah, thanks to all of you. I also, the last piece sort of on identity, as we constantly are trying to convince or introduce ourselves to the world and educate all the time, is also for us like this growth and identity and pleasing and figuring out who we are. I think Shalini spoke about it really cogently earlier, is that for me, and I think I've spoken about to each of you, that identity, I was like, oh, it's not about the one or the other. It's that feeling of like this, that's the identity. Like that's who I am. It's the one that's like constantly in flux and searching and moving and convincing and doing and educating and this and that and pleasing and then finding space. So like I just always am like begging my brothers and sisters that are Indian and American to be like, I just read this thing the other day. There's also like rest is a right, not a reward. Right? And that's something so hard that I just started thinking about it. I'm like, can I rest? No, I can't. I have to be super person at all times. So just like knowing that too, and that, I know it's hard, but I'm so happy that we have a format like this, that we can be in it together and talk about this, and that we get to like almost break our necks nodding our heads because we're so excited that other humans in the room get it, So I love that. I love that Shreya is like the next up, right? Our next leader in this regard at 17, moving forward into this life. So thank you all for being part of Optics and Mirror for the Love of LA. Just such a sincere joy. And I can't wait to hang out and collab and live and hug when we come out of this. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you.